This program is brought to you by First National Bank of Botswana.
FNB, how can we help you?
After some rough patches in 2019, characterized by, amongst other things, the trade wars between China and the United States of America, the global manufacturing challenges, the World Economic Outlook presented a very optimistic global economic position for the year 2020. The forum estimated that global economic growth would rise from an estimated 2.9% in 2019 to 3.3% in the year 2020. Most mainstream forecasters deduced that the worst of the storms were past, as impeding challenges seemed to be meandered through with ease. This was, however, before the outbreak of COVID-19, which all sectors in the various economies experienced its wrath. As the COVID-19 outbreak continues to spread to more countries in all corners of the world, the outlook for global economic growth is now at 1.6%, rendering initial forecasts that the total economic damage would be mostly contained to China no longer plausible. At the time of recording this episode, CNN Business reported that fears are looming of a recession as the coronavirus is forcing people to stay home and avoid travel, slashing the demand for flights, hotel rooms and restaurant bookings. At the same time, factory shutdowns in China and elsewhere and more fears of more disruptions in other parts of the world have snarled global supply chains. When we were recording this episode, South Africa was already on a lockdown, halting most of its economic activity. While that may be true for other parts of the world, and indeed our neighboring South Africa, who are affected by this virus, is our situation unique? Nonetheless, what do all these sector shutdowns mean for the overall economy of the country? In the 2009 recession, reports showed we were minutely affected, if at all. Taking into account all variables, is the COVID-19 experience going to be the same? And what would it take to get the economy back on its feet? We're joined by financial economist Emmanuel Njadimwe and chief economist Matludi Sebabole, who are going to be sharing their findings on the impact of the COVID-19 on our economy. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming onto the program. What is our economic outlook as regarding the COVID-19 pandemic?
In terms of the economy, we are stable. The fact that there is the free movement of goods and services, especially between Botswana and South Africa, it's good, and it's promising that we won't have any stockpiling that is going to happen. But there are signs of stockpiling that we are seeing. People are going to the stock, to the shops. A lot of people, we see a lot of queues, and there's hope that we might not run out of stock yet, due to the fact that there is that movement of trucks between Botswana and South Africa, where we get a lot of our goods. And we also see a lot of businesses that are, innovating and reinventing their services in the spaces of e-commerce. We've seen companies that are implementing the online purchases platform to try and ensure that people are actually, getting goods by staying in their homes. So that is one innovation that is really trying to cap the spread. So it's a very good initiative from the stores that are actually already implementing that.
Looking at COVID-19 and impact on the economy of Botswana particularly, we've got to realize that the reason why we're not only seeing the impact of this virus on health only, but also on the economy is because it's a perfect storm. What I mean by saying it's a perfect storm is that it has disrupted both the supply side of the economy. So the supply side is primarily where you've got those who are producing either the goods and services. There's complete disruptions of your natural producers across the world, as well as the demand side, which is now where the consumption comes from, consuming whatever has been supplied. So both activity in the production side has been disrupted, and borders across many economies are closed. Trade is at a minimal and only on essential services to contain obviously the spread of the virus. So that is why I'm saying it has actually hit the global economies as a perfect storm that has brought the world to a standstill on the productivity, the production side, and the demand side.
So, Babala and Jenny just painted an entirely different picture from your own viewpoint. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Maintaining a level of optimism is very important, but brutal facts have got to be faced. Brutal facts in that if you look at our structural makeup of the economy of Botswana, it primarily speaks to our over-reliance on a few revenue earners. So that makes you vulnerable. If you look at the budget as was presented in February by Minister Matseka, you look at the makeup of that budget, at least 60% or more of revenue comes from two main sources: mining, which is primarily diamonds revenue, and SACU. Those are vulnerable to external volatilities. It has nothing to do with what you do here, because mining is going to earn us and the revenue as far as people are buying diamonds, as far as the demand, the sales is healthy and the prices are actually on a positive trajectory. So if diamonds are not selling, or if they're selling but not at an attractive price, or not at the volumes that are sustainable for our revenue mix, then it speaks to our vulnerability. The other factor, again, over 20% of that revenue is coming from SACU. You will remember SACU is an economic trading bloc that we are in as Botswana, including a large giant in terms of the economy size within that bloc, being South Africa and other players, Namibia, Swaziland and Lesotho. Again, when you look at SACU receipts, particularly when you look even your customs duty, are primarily based on trade. It's on earnings out of trade done by these member states with countries that are outside this trading bloc. The question is this an environment for trading? No. Economies are not trading. It's a bare minimum. It's on essentials. Countries are on lockdown in all of those different countries all over, even those around ourselves. So it means in terms of earning, within even that SACU block is at risk. So when I say these two combined make up over 60% of your external revenues, it speaks to that vulnerability. And that's just on the revenue side. And remember what this is posing is, whereas there's pressure on revenue, downward pressure, there is even more pressure on expenditure. You've got to put in place health interventions that come at a cost. You've got to put economic stimulus packages or fiscal packages that come at a cost to government. You've got to fund those packages, be it for health or economy, at a time where your revenue mix is facing such risk on the downside.
When running a business means
Where did I put that receipt?
we can help you with instant accounting, free software that does your bookkeeping for you. When running a business means
Wait, what do you mean the container hasn't arrived?
we help protect your business from risk with Mohwebi Insurance. And when it means
How do we pay our staff that don't have bank accounts?
we help you make multiple payments directly to people's phones with e-wallet bulk send. At FNB, we're constantly innovating to help business owners at every stage of their journey.
What kind of damage to our economy are we looking at after all of this is done? Mr. Babala.
The reality is COVID-19's impact on the Botswana's economy is cutting across. What I mean cutting across is I mean all sectors. The sectors of the economy can be dissected into three rather. Your primary sectors, which is more of your production sectors, that's more of your agriculture and mining. And then you've got your secondary sectors, which is more of your utilities, your manufacturing and your construction. And you've got your tertiary sectors, which is more of your services sectors. That includes tourism and retail and transport and logistics. So what I mean when I say the impact is cutting across is because of that perfect storm that I alluded to. That disruption to both the supply side and the demand side is obviously impacting all these different sectors of the economy. Without doubt, the severity of it is different. What I mean by the severity is that you're most impacted naturally in this sense is probably now when you look at your tourism and hospitality, because flights are not there anymore, people are not traveling. The feet that you rely, the foot traffic that you expect to see in your borders for people to come and spend in our deltas and other tourism areas are not coming in simply because people are staying at home. So that sector, obviously, in terms of that severity scale, is impacted hugely. In the context of Botswana, is the second largest earner of foreign revenue. Tourism answers the second largest after mining. So that obviously speaks to what that impact would be or could be on our revenue.
Gentlemen, all things considered, are we anticipating a recession? But before you answer, on the background to that, in the last economic recession or the financial crisis about 10 years ago, Botswana was not so affected, if at all it was. Are we looking at the same experience if there is a recession, or is it going to be of much bigger proportions?
Our economy is usually slow reacting to events. So I don't foresee it happening so suddenly, and I don't foresee it in the magnitude that we've seen in the 2007-2008 crisis. So I think we're going to be okay. Although our neighbors, we've seen South Africa going into a pre-recession conditions a few months earlier, before the COVID-19 strikes. And with the virus continuing to spread across the country, it continued to, the currency continued to depreciate against the pula. And that will give Botswana an opportunity, because the goods in South Africa are going to be cheaper for us. And therefore we will be able to actually get more at a lower price than we naturally do. So we're going to see that slow down in the economy, but the country still maintains a loose, steady monetary stance, and the inflation is still below the targeted range. The banks are still, continue to do their lending. So it's going to be a stable economic outlook.
We're seeing a repeat of what we saw a decade plus one years ago, global financial crisis. And in fact, what we are seeing is probably worse, because in 2009, you almost see a collapse in the financial system and having a trickle-down effect. As I said, we are facing a perfect storm. A perfect storm hits your supply side and your demand side. And I'm answering this from an economic standpoint of view, because in economics, two things only matter, simply because of the multiplier effect on the ability of an economy to keep running. And that is full productivity and full employment. Full productivity means your supply side of production levels are significant and keep allowing for a multiplier effect. Employment means you are creating jobs, salaries are being earned and money is circulating. And so what I mean comparing the two and saying this one actually poses a significant threat in that disruption on the supply side. Look at the numbers that we're seeing, globally, regionally, and elsewhere. You look at a lot of things are actually testing the levels that they have tested, we've not seen in years. Look at oil prices globally. They're testing the levels we've not seen since the early 90s. We've not even seen those levels during the Asian crisis of 98. We did not see them during the technical bubble, techno bubble of 2001, when your technology companies were coming in and there was a burst in those stock markets. 08 global crisis and sub-mortgages and all of those. The levels we're talking of are the levels in your early 90s. Look at currencies. The rand, just as an example, just on the 29th of March, tested its lowest levels ever in history, in terms of reaching its lowest levels ever. And so when you look at this psychological and physical levels that prices are testing, we've not seen those in years, in multi-decades, or maybe even in history. It's showing the level of the intensity and the impact that this is having on the economies. Look at productivity. If borders are closed, we're seeing large economies, China did the same, your other large economies, even closer to our borders, South Africa has done the same in terms of a lockdown. that impacts productivity, that impacts production, that impacts jobs, and that is obviously having a multiplier effect of money that is circulating, business activity that is needed if you are pumping in those two crucial things that I talked to you about for the economy, being productivity and employment. People are not earning revenue at the moment. New jobs are not being created. You're trying to maintain the existing ones and trying to minimize losses of jobs, losses of wages. You're trying to make sure that businesses actually survive this.
So Babala, with your very gloomy outlook, what do you think it would take for the economy to rise above all of this and for all the sectors to recover?
It actually calls for a different way of thinking if you think about it. It calls for an accelerated implementation of developmental plans. And when I mean developmental plans, I mean plans aimed at enhancing self-sufficiency of the economy of Botswana. Self-sufficiency has a lot to do with production, not consumption. What are we producing? Who are we producing it for? Who is our market? And we have those self-sufficiency levels. Starting with the basics, food. How many producers do we have locally for food? So it also allows us to introspect and view what is it that we need to be doing for the production industries locally, because that is going to meet a demand, and a demand starts with your own market. So it means this gives an opportunity to evaluate our priorities, evaluate our focus areas, and if you look at the impact that we're seeing over time, it's pointing to one crucial thing. We have got to diversify this economy as much as we can. And diversification, not at a high level macro perspective only. We have got to have local industries. If we have to produce ventilators today or in the next week, do we have what it takes? It again speaks to other interlinkages. That speaks to human capital. That speaks to the knowledge base. So it means looking at our focus areas from a different perspective altogether. Knowledge-based, no longer defined, or not just a focus area of saying, a well-educated nation.
Can we now conclude our discussion? Is it all that bad? Is there a silver lining to all of this? Are there any opportunities amidst this turmoil, your perfect storms, Babala, as you put it?
Absolutely. So yes, including in your ICT, in your health, even food production. People continue to eat. So provision of such essential services in food production is also opportunities that we are seeing across the supply value chain. And because producing nations, producing economies, producing companies for food continue to work, even for economies where we've seen lockdowns, there are industries that are actually booming. Look at your techno industries, your 4IRs. If people are working from home, they've got to be enabled, and that speaks to information ICT. Look at your health and pharmaceuticals. Production of ventilators, you've got to see manufacturers going outside their comfort zone, your Teslas going into production of ventilators. So there are pockets of opportunities in these industries, and what is therefore important for any economies and businesses is to be leveraging of, again, those opportunities that come, with the ills that we're seeing cutting across the different sectors. So it also means different way of thinking for governments, different way of thinking for businesses, and even for households, because it speaks to social distancing and how you'll even manage your household and finances, given the situation that you face yourself in, because you've got to face rentals and food and all of those, even in an environment where wages might not be growing, or in extreme instances where you might be out of income altogether.
It's not only all negative, but we're also going to see some positives in terms of the companies that are the pharmaceutical companies that are working on the cure or on the vaccine. We've seen their stocks soaring, especially those that are based in the US and other developed countries. Their stocks are performing well. So we're going to see a lot of those companies, doing much better than other companies and being presented with that opportunity.
When running a business means,
Where did I put that receipt?
we can help you with instant accounting, free software that does your bookkeeping for you. When running a business means,
Wait, what do you mean the container hasn't arrived?
we help protect your business from risk with Mohwebi Insurance. And when it means
How do we pay our staff that don't have bank accounts?
we help you make multiple payments directly to people's phones with e-wallet bulk send. At FNB, we're constantly innovating to help business owners at every stage of their journey.